Hello, and welcome to the Ascend Health Show. I'm Nick Angelis. I'm your host. I'm a nurse anesthetist, and I'm one of the owners of Ascend Health Center. And I'm here again with Rodney Long, licensed independent social worker. How are you doing?
Good. Getting ready for the holidays.
You know, for 2 or 3 shows, I've been plugging about this award we won for the best instructional runner-up, but it's getting a bit much. I should probably.
It's run its course.
Yeah. Well, there might be 2 awards, actually.
Oh, it looks like it, yeah.
The other one must be yours, the avocado toast episode.
That's right.
So I wanted to call this Is Self-Pay Silly? Or What's Wrong with BetterHelp? It's basically that right now there's a lot of great companies making these fairly inexpensive therapy or medication or these online portals, but they're also not that great for you. So I just want to talk to Rodney about it, and by the end we'll probably have an opinion about it that you should listen to.
I already have an opinion about it, but we should talk about it and see maybe I'm missing something.
I mean, I'm very vulnerable. Like, I'll probably listen to your opinion and change my opinion.
Yeah. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't.
You're a therapist. Like, you've got these skills.
Yeah.
Actually, it is my personality.
Yeah.
My brother and I used to argue about where to go to eat.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd convince each other and continue arguing just with the opposite restaurant.
Just like to go at it.
No one's ever accused me of not being open-minded.
There you go.
So I'll start with, I guess, my pet peeve, because let's be honest, the Ascend Health Show is just whatever soapbox I'm in the mood for every day. Yeah. So my problem is with ketamine. So obviously at Ascend Health Center, newsflash for those of you who this is your first episode, we offer ketamine infusions, Spravato, which is S-ketamine or half the ketamine molecule. Janssen makes it into a nasal spray. And we also have transcranial magnetic stimulation. So these are all cutting-edge mental health treatments that very few other places have, because it's a lot of education, a lot of expense, and we offer it to people with other psychiatrists and therapists because, why take on patients' medications and do all these treatments when we can make it more available? So the problem is that now there's, I don't want to say cheaper versions of it because they're actually a little bit expensive, but there's ways that you can do a lot of these therapies online. But ketamine being a controlled substance, it's a little bit like the Facebook Adderall, if you're aware of the Facebook Adderall.
Yeah.
I think they clamped down on it. I'm not getting as many ads.
Otherwise
it'd probably be a poor idea to even mention it. But essentially, you talk to a doctor through a Facebook ad, and 10 minutes later, like, oh, here's my prescription of a stimulant. Now I'll get A's instead of B's, and 20 years from now, I won't understand why everything's black and white and why I can't find any joy in life once my dopamine receptors have burned out. Sorry, is that a little bit too?
No, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I think you're spot on. That's.
But so the issue is that a lot of these are meant to be very useful, convenient ways to partake in healthcare, and one of my main points is that you may want to ignore everything that we're saying today and try it out, because I could be wrong, and maybe they'll have like some sort of deal or discount, and you're like, nope, this is working for me.
I think that part of that was like for a lot of them, especially on the mental health side, you being on the prescribing side, I guess. On the mental health side, I think a lot of it was about access, especially during COVID, you saw an increase in these things, which I think is really cool, but I don't know that access was really as much of an issue as people might have thought it was before. What I think happens is a lot of these companies, they get a lot of money behind them, and so they get a lot of advertising, and I think the service or the quality of the care suffers a bit at the expense of growth and at the expense of kind of being on the cutting edge, where somebody like Ascent is really, has that here, local kind of face to it and into it, who I know is doing the research and the work, where I think a lot of these newer companies kind of were, a lot of them are about growth, and so I think the quality suffers on the back end.
That's fair. Like, we just had a team day at Ascend where for the whole day we didn't have any patients in the office, and my poor employees had to listen to me all day. We cut off early, but I took this like vision that I had in 2020 and edited it, and I was like, I had some really stupid ideas in 2020. Like, it was just like, we're going to be the premier provider in Northeast Ohio and expand. And I was like, that's terrible. Why don't we just stay in like Fairlawn, Copley, Wadsworth, since we're on WCTV? Like, we don't need patients I still have a few patients who drive for, 6 or 7 hours to see me. But for the majority, like, you just need something accessible.
Yeah.
Because if you're an hour away from me and you've got an issue, well, especially for me as a nurse anesthetist, like, you're gonna have to drive an hour for me to do anything for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of it, like almost a breakdown of community and community supports is why these things are thriving.
Yeah, I think sometimes people want to try new things too. I think especially on like in the mental health space, I often hear people say things like, I tried this or that medication didn't work for me or this, and I'm like, number one, you probably played your own doctor. Like so often that happens. I hear that. Number two, you probably gave it a week, and then said it didn't work. So, to have the opportunity to connect with a place that you can be in front of and really talk with, I think is important. So the more people we have doing that, great. I just want to make sure that we're doing it well,
So really, I guess my complaint is more of an overarching complaint of society that Airbnb wouldn't be in business if we still had friends that we could just spend the night at their house and go visit them.
That's true.
Uber wouldn't be in business if I just had a friend good enough to take me to the airport when I needed it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the way society is kind of fragmenting into not having those connections.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. Yeah, I think we've suffered in a lot of ways in that, and I think COVID did a number on a lot of us. One of my big gripes is I don't think many people, or maybe they can, but I think more people would be happy if they worked less. Most people are satisfied at 40, 50 hours a week, and I think that people really need a lot more time to themselves because I think you can't really spend a lot of time with your friends if you get home at 6 and are in bed by 9.
Yeah. Did you talk to my wife before this episode?
No, I did not.
Is this an intervention? Is she's going to come out that door?
Hey,
Well, it's been a great show. Sounds like we need to wrap this up.
Yeah, no, so you work a bit.
I'm just here for my therapy. That's what this show is.
Yeah, I think it's...
Now it's our third episode together. Like
that's right. Yeah, I just think it's tough, man. People, like, there's something like 168 hours in a week, you spend 40 or 50 of that at work, and on top of your travel time for that and getting ready and, unwinding and then putting the kids to bed, you might get an hour to yourself in the evening, so I think sometimes it's hard for people to want to call a friend when they get an hour to them, 2 hours to themselves. And
well, that might be one of the reasons that my 20/20 vision was so dumb, because, we'd started talking back then, and that was when I was working 100 hours a week trying to get this business off the ground. So of course the few minutes I had to like type out this like, here's how we're going to be great. Like I had stupid ideas. That's what you said.
I commend you though. I don't know how, I really commend people who are able to kind of want to do these big things and then they do them. That takes work. It takes commitment. And I think that the process that happens when we're trying to reach those big things. There's a guy, he's one of these big sales guru guys. His name is Grant Cardone,
Okay.
He says 10x your vision, so if you want to make $1 million this year, shoot for 10, because, if you shoot for $1 million, you're going to make 750,
Right.
If you shoot for 10, you're gonna be able to surpass whatever you think you can do. So I always commend when guys can do that, and some people are just wired that way,
Well, I mean, and that's probably how these businesses, like you said, started, where they have these great ideas of nationwide networks. But I mean, I think what you're also saying is, okay, so you accomplished something, you worked really hard for a while. Well, you need to take that break. You need to kind of pause. And again, something I'm struggling with now that, okay, I no longer am using my personal savings for payroll, but at the same time, I don't need to keep the same frenetic pace, especially in mental health, because the nice thing about what we do is that people often criticize those who have mental health issues, but they have some of the most genius minds because they have to struggle with their brains all day long. So if they come into an office and they know everyone's stressed and overworked and miserable, like, they'll know. You can't hide it from them. I mean, it's okay for me because I'm a pretty transparent person anyways. I was never one of those nurses who could just smile and pretend to like somebody. But and as a therapist, it's the same thing. Like, they will know.
Oh yeah, people sense what's going on. That's kind of the emotional intelligence part about being able to pick up on when people are upset or frantic or But it is about slowing down too. I think. That's why I hate social media. I think they've sold the idea that people can be on all the time, grind and hustle. And you should, you wanted to build your business. You should, you have to. But I think at the same time, like, to me, it's a zero-sum game. Every hour I spend at work is an hour I don't get with my son. And so prioritizing that for a short time can be okay. Hey, I got to spend the next 5 years kind of building this.
Right.
I think is important because that lays the groundwork for what I want to do. But it's okay that changes too. I thought I wanted to have 10 locations, but maybe I am okay with one. I think that's okay.
Yeah, one of that was a really funny Freudian slippers that you talked about Freud earlier. One of my best friends, Dr. Milton Dragadakis, I just like saying his last name a lot, is a pediatric dentist, and that was the challenge that he had. I can expand my business and have 10 of these, or this is a very crucial time for my kids. And it was nice that he didn't just say, I got to do what I need to do for my kids. He made it into a pros, cons type of thing. He treated it as an important decision. Yeah. And spoiler, he just still has the one location. But it is important to actually know what you're giving up and is it worth it, and what will I do once I achieve it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, these online therapies, these kind of those kind of things. What they do is they allow people to not fully engage, with the process, and that's all I tell people a lot of times is, whatever decision you make, just make it intentionally. Don't just fall into life. Don't just fall into the decision that you make. So I have friends that work a ton and make a ton of money, but they might miss some baseball games. I'm never going to miss a baseball game. That's just me. I'm going to make less money, but I'm not missing a baseball game. And so that's a decision that I feel like everybody has to make intentionally. Right. And so I think these online therapies, and they give you, again, that illusion of kind of being able to say, well, hey, I can work 50, 100 hours and still kind of get my therapy at 10 o'clock at night when I chat with somebody online. But we're not really doing therapy then. You have some support then, and that's great. But and that's what we need to maybe get through to that point where you can slow down a little bit.
That was a good segue back to our topic, because I was also planning one as we're talking, but the other thing that you said about the authenticity of actually working with a provider that you know. So I think that's my problem with it, that I feel that it's almost like a tokenized system, as you would almost like a Airbnb or Uber or something, where it's all right, here's some of my money, make me feel better, and it's not that give and take, and sometimes awkward interaction with a real provider. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, when I've went on those sites to see what kind of was what, a lot of it comes down to a check boxes and an algorithm, which isn't how therapy happens. That's not how prescribing happens, And so when somebody can hop on and they say, well, I need a black therapist who's LGBTQ friendly and, checks these other boxes, there's no opportunity there to connect. If I have a client email me, I say call me, and we need to talk about what's going on. And so people need that, and really we cannot commoditize therapy. Yeah,
we just can't.
And that's why this is such a fun topic too, because as a black male therapist, you're such a hot commodity, and I'm just vaguely ethnic, so
ambiguous in ways.
Right.
There's not a lot of minority therapists out there. Very few minorities and even fewer male minorities out there. Yeah.
But that is exactly what you're saying. That a lot of times, this is exactly what I need. Now deliver it to me. And it's that cookie cutter approach that kind of fails us. And a lot of those type of therapies, it is where the therapist is always on demand. And when I started the clinic, that was my idea. If you have a problem with pain or mental health, you can come to the clinic and I'll be there and I'll fix you. And I was like, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Because what am I teaching? Reliance. From a business standpoint, someone might argue that it would work, but obviously it's unethical if you're just teaching people that you are their savior and nothing else can happen without you.
That's exactly it. When I started, I was like, I'm for the people, man, so I want to be available. And but the problem is, at that point I was prioritizing them more than everything became a crisis, And I also wasn't teaching them independence, so I gave that up. And I think, from a business standpoint, I one time had an idea for a business called Night Owl Therapy, where I was going to be a third shift therapist, to people who needed third shift therapy. And the point is I want to help people, we want to be available.
No, it makes sense, because you can tell them, listen, I know you're about to spend $100 on Amazon. Hold up.
That's right.
Come see me.
That's right.
And I'll be $50.
That's right.
And you won't have this awkward explanation to your spouse, what? A third melon, please? What is it? You don't even like grapefruit or melons or whatever.
Yeah, that's right, man. So so I think it's just about that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because back to my original point about the ketamine, or same with stimulants, or no one. I don't think anyone has done like a benzodiazepine mail order, but it's on its way if there's any legality. Because obviously, this, and I should say this happened with opioids too. Like that's another reason I'm so against a lot of these. McKesson, this is community TV, so we can talk smack about companies. It's fine. They're not going to watch it. And this is all like, this was I think a $20 billion lawsuit. I don't remember how many billions. But McKesson was allowing pharmacies in West Virginia to fill massive amounts of opioid prescriptions. Like thousands of cars would converge on these cars and would get all the opioids they want. And it was legal until obviously there are a lot of overdose deaths and litigation, and now McKesson's really hard to work with. So this has happened before, where we've made it really, really easy to get things that should only be done with a face-to-face conversation. Like one of our other guests, Mark Garrettson, a nurse practitioner, he won't see patients unless it's face-to-face for the first time. Like he's like, unless I get that connection, like you're not getting anything. And a lot of times, like these are nuanced products. Like in the case of ketamine, like at our clinic, we decided, no, you're doing it in here in the clinic where we can watch you. We're not sending you home with anything. And there are still good arguments for these services, because obviously it's a competitor, so you'd expect me to be like, oh, this is terrible. You need to see me. Only I can save you. And there's definitely places for it. But it shouldn't be your go-to or your first option when you're still trying to see if a line of therapy or a line of medications is what you should be going for.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, is that we just want so much convenience, in everything we do. And, with therapy, I just had to tell a couple, they were really on the brink of divorce, and they wanted to be virtual, and I said, I won't see you guys virtual, because if you're on the brink, you need to be in here. I need to be able to see your body language. I need to be able to see the way you connect with each other, how, your nonverbals, that kind of stuff. And I think the same can be said for prescribing. This shouldn't be about convenience, and I think that's what we've made it about. BetterHelp, Talkspace, kind of all these companies. McKesson, it's about convenience and what's easy. And I don't think change happens that way.
Right, because it was kind of convenient to slide into the issues that you had. So unfortunately, it's going to be inconvenient. And now's a lesson for me too, because of the way some of the therapies we have at Ascend work so quickly for patients. I'd send them home like, you don't ever have to come back. You're fixed, great. And now I'm realizing, no, the patients who do the best are the ones that we'll see them like once a month, once every 2 months. This sweet spot where it's not this, I really had to see Nick's face again. But at the same time, it's not a complete like, you got this.
Oh yeah, no, for me that's best practice in therapy too. If I start seeing you out a week and you progress every week and you progress really well, we move to 2 weeks and monthly, and I might see you for 6 months, once a month, just to make sure you're still doing well. And I think that model of just having that support there when they might not have it with medication or therapy really makes sense.
And again, we're not saying that it's a terrible idea to ever use BetterHelp or Mindbloom or any of these services. But you really should get a discount or a coupon to start. And we don't think that they're long lasting. Like maybe it can get you through something, but you shouldn't base what you need on. And I'm not even saying that the clinicians aren't caring. Now, professionally speaking, they probably aren't the best because they're working for like a one of those type of organizations. But it's a little arrogant to say.
No, I would agree with you, though. What I think happened with a lot of these, where so many of these are venture-backed firms that are the priority is profit, and we're all a business at the end of the day. I need to make money, you need to make money, but not at the expense of our clients.
Or our reputation.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think that's what happens, where you found clients or therapists or prescribers who were able to really say, like, hey, all I got to do is hop online and I can, see 15, 20 people, kind of whatever it is for your guys' business in a day and make all the money I need to make, then great. And I think we're seeing that now, that when the decision is made, people can be greedy, and convenience doesn't lend itself to long-term change.
Right, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And part of that, so I said they might not be high quality, but I'm not high quality in that I could never really do a self-pay practice. Like the ketamine infusions are self-pay, but a complete self-pay, I don't have the mindset for it, because unfortunately I'm not a here's your orange juice type of person. I'm like, look, let's find a discount and get you better cheap, and you can get out of here. Like I don't have the right personality even a little bit. So that can be part of it too, is that and this is a podcast on the Growing Yourself to Wellness podcast. I was on it yesterday. You should really check it out. It's really fun. But we talked about self-pay versus insurance, and that was one of the themes that came out, that a lot of times self-pay actually saves money because it's not the incredible amount of bureaucracy and costs associated with, like, wait, what's your insurance? Why aren't they paying this? Who can we call so that they'll pay it? But even that doesn't always work well because of the same issues where, sometimes it's not the right personality or the right fit. And it's a quality of care versus customer service issue as well.
Yeah, I used to think that self-pay therapists were better. I used to think that. I used to think, well, they must be so good that they could charge more money, and really there's kind of, I don't believe that anymore. What the truth is that some people just decide to take insurance, other people don't. I mean, you make more money as self-pay, and I think it's probably true that they're good therapists on both sides. What seems to be true for self-pay is that when you specialize in something, people will pay whatever for it. You'll spend $1,000 on your iPhone because you believe it's worth it.
Right.
You'll pay $150 for a session. If I tell you I could repair your marriage, you'll pay whatever I ask you to pay for.
As you should, because if you're like $30, I don't know, Rodney.
And that's exactly it. So often, sometimes the insurance kind of, I worked for a good time with business owners. I worked with men. My pitch then was I worked with men who learned money doesn't buy good mental health. That was my pitch. And but you'd see these guys who had the money to spend on this, and they would want to, and they would almost look like they needed to be self-pay, kind of thing. And so ultimately, I think you get good care with both, but I think the point is kind of what are you looking for in it? Because I do believe, when you spend money out of your pocket, it makes you have skin in the game.
Right.
You're not going to miss appointments as frequently. You're not. But I think a lot of that comes down to the therapist too. I always make sure that I tell my clients when we first start, like, don't bail on me before this gets good. You know what I mean? Like that first 90 days, I need you in here weekly so we can make sure we get the ball rolling.
Yeah, because you're right. You can find great clinicians in places where you're like, wait, what? Really? That's where you go? It's like, I found someone that I like. I'm doing well. And it's the opposite too, where sometimes you can go to some sort of posh, like Beechwood's known for their self-pay mental health. And it's the same thing. Usually the problem is, though, when parents really want the best for their kids, that's when it gets complicated, I feel.
Yeah. I actually tell almost all the parents I work with now, if you're not willing to put in just as much work as you're asking me to put in with your child, don't come. Because 9 times out of 10, you have a lot of work to do too. That's why we're here. And so they might pay $150 or $175 to see their kid, but I quit seeing kids when I said, I still see some now, but I would say, like, hey, the parent just wants to, that mom in Beechwood, who just wants to drop $150 to say, like, hey, my kid needs to talk to somebody. And it's like, well, this is a lot more work than just him coming in here once a week.
Right. And we're not just complaining about Beechwood. Like Pepper Pike, we're looking at you too.
That's right.
Hudson.
That's right. You're on our list.
But even for my clinic, we're in the Fairlawn, Copley, Bath area, and it was supposed to be when we first started. Again, not taking my personality into account, unfortunately. There was supposed to be like this, mostly self-pay, the ketamine infusions. But then over time, I was like, well, who really needs the care? And ironically, the people who are in most desperate need of care are those that fit between like Medicaid and Medicare and like insurance that does anything for you. So that's actually the gap in this country, is where you have terrible high deductible insurance, and that's when you have to really make important questions about your health. Like, okay, what can I give up? Is this actually serving me? Is it not? And that's, again, where some of these therapy places can kind of put a Band-Aid on it. If it's online, but you really have to ask yourself, like, am I getting better? Like, and part of it's just finding a clinician who'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's it. Sometimes you got to be willing to say this is out of my wheelhouse or out of my depth, or that kind of. Self-pay versus insurance seems to be strictly a business decision at this point in time. You know what I mean? Like, but in terms, I have clients that have insurance that might as well be self-pay. And it costs them the same, because of their high deductible plan, basically the whole year. And so I think when we're checking in with clients, I check in with all my clients and I say, hey, I work for you at the end of the day. We want to make sure you're getting better. And so I'm checking in to say, are we on track? Are you where you want to be with this? Because at the end of the day, you might come in because you have a tough relationship with your mom, let's say, and you might have to have some tough conversations. And if you don't want to, then it might be time to end therapy, you know. And if you're willing to, then let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you're saying, like, sometimes we can focus too much on the economic part of it. Like, I've got a coupon, Rodney. I've got a coupon to see you. Nothing at all wrong with me, but I'm going to use this coupon, darn it.
Yeah, I tell people, don't let money be the reason you do or don't do therapy. You know, especially from like the discount portion. I see these ads for BetterHelp all the time. It's like 1 month free or something like that. You know, and it's like, that really is, to me, is an ethical problem, because if you don't have the money or the insurance to do therapy, going to BetterHelp for a month is might help. I'm not going to say that it won't, but it's certainly not going to solve your problems. And I would hate to start something with somebody and get in the middle of something like trauma, and then we're a month in and you got to stop coming because we didn't explore that. So the financial aspect of it.
No, that makes sense, because we are saying both, and it is a bit of a nuanced approach. We're saying, like, it's okay to kind of experiment and see what you need and get a clue for it, but you also have to be aware of what it entails, because that's something with psychiatry, of course. I've said it many times that that's the challenge of psychiatry, is that how can I kind of dip my toe in the water without being on Zoloft for 30 years? You know, and these are honest questions that you should expect honest answers to.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think we owe it to ourselves to find what works. You know, my counselor, the guy I see, my psychologist, is he's 83 years old. You know, this 80-year-old white dude. He was a psychologist before he even had to have a PhD. So he's
awesome.
But he's great. You know, he's great. But I went through probably 3 or 4 people before I found him. You know, saying, here's who I click with, here's what I need. You know.
And once you find them, that's what you were saying, that like you just gotta stay with them. That's all there is to it. So if you are watching this and think you might need some help, ascendhealthcenter.com is where we're at Ascend Health Center. And then if they want to reach you, what's the easiest way?
RodneyLongJr.com.
And you can always find him on Psychology Today. Ask around. Everybody knows Rodney. At least they should.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Right, or we can have some sort of like almost like a bat signal, since we've already talked about avocados and melon squeezers.
Just flash a flashlight in the air.
Yeah, just prepare your produce. Rodney will be on his way. Thanks for joining us today for the show.
Thanks.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.